Welcome, everybody. My name is Andrew Patricio, and I'm going to be your presenter today. For those of you that haven't met me before, I've always been a business owner. For the last 30 or so years, I've run my own business in various industries. I was involved in retailing. I've been involved in consulting, owned a plant nursery for a while. But the interesting lessons I learned in every single one of these businesses is that if you've organized, if you've got simple systems, if you've got simple processes, it makes you a much better manager. But let us start off at the beginning. You know, when I meet business owners, and I meet them on a regular basis, one of the biggest challenges is finding time to do things. I was discussing it yesterday with a business owner. When you're marketing, you're not selling. When you're selling, you're not marketing. Some of the challenges we face as business owners. But I still believe that if you want to build a successful business, and I want you to think about this as we go through this webinar. If you want to build a successful business, you need to develop systems and tools that make your life easier to manage. And that is the key thing, that you want to come up with tools, with systems, with processes that make your life easier. Because if you can manage your time, if you can manage your people, if you can teach them how to manage themselves, you're going to become a more successful business owner. One of the key problems, and I hear this over and over again, is the challenge of time. That we've only got so many hours in a day, and we've got to get things done. And this is the key thing. We've got to get things done. And you and I have got to make sure that we find ways to get things done. And I still think the biggest challenge we have on a daily basis is managing our time. So let's look at some typical time management issues. These are some of the problems that we go through, or these are some of the things that tell us that we have an issue that we need to deal with. So the first thing you've got to understand is that if you're regularly getting late or forgetting meetings, you have a problem. And I don't know if anybody knows somebody like this, but everybody has somebody in their family like this. You know, you're going to have an event, you know it's going to start at 2 o'clock, you tell them 1:30. People like that regularly have a problem. You don't want to develop that reputation as a business owner as that guy or that person that arrives a few minutes late. The other thing you have is somebody that's consistently late with their responsibilities. Consistently late. You know, always going over deadlines. That could be one of your challenges. What about this one? You know, where people are exhausted. You'll hear business owners saying, you know what, I just don't have enough time to sleep, to eat, and spend time with our family. One of the lessons I've learned over the years, that if we want to build successful businesses, neglecting our family is not a good idea. You don't want to go and build this very, very successful business and then have nobody to share it with. So be very, very careful. And a lot of us get caught up in this every now and then, where we're working these long hours, exhausted, we're just not getting enough sleep, and we're just not spending enough time with our families. Be very, very careful of that. A lot of us struggle to even be productive when we haven't had enough sleep. So managing those hours is very, very important. Another problem is always working but not meeting your deadlines, you know, getting late over and over again. And finally, and probably the most important thing for me as a business owner, is the stress and the diseases that come from being stressed permanently. Be very, very careful. If you're not organized, you're going to be overwhelmed, you're going to be stressed, your employees are going to feel it, your customers are going to see that you're always late, and this is going to affect your business directly. So just be very, very careful of this. So let us focus on some of the things that affect our business on a daily basis and create problems for us. The first one, and I'm sure every single one of you can relate to this, is indecision. I have to make a decision. Actually, I think as a business owner, our lives are spent making decisions. So one of the challenges is when you delay the decision. You delay it. You know what? Things don't go away. And I think if you can work out a system or way of, you know, making that decision, deciding, and moving ahead with it, that is probably one of the best things you can do. And one of the ways that I use that have worked quite effectively over the years is set a deadline. by this date, I have to make a decision about what software we're going to buy. By this date, I have to make a decision about whether we're going forward with this project or not. So you set yourself deadlines, and it makes it easier for you to manage things like that. Another one is telephone calls. Be very, very careful. Some of us have even developed reputations. I was speaking to one of our clients this week, and she was saying to us, you know, you need to phone this business owner, but you'll see that he talks a lot. Just be very, very careful of that. You know, maybe one of your strategies is to actually group your phone calls together and move through them. But the telephone could be one of your biggest challenges. The next one for me is a big, big issue, and a lot of small business owners complain about this. How do we deal with email and social media? You know, email for some of us was enough of a headache. Now all of a sudden, we've got the social media thing. Some people say you need to be spending an hour a day. Other people say you need to be spending time in the morning and time in the afternoon. Other people say that, you know, the more time they spend on social media, the better it is. So you and I need to make sure that we come up with some guidelines for ourselves and obviously also for our employees so that we ensure that we do not waste time on social media. The fourth one, and one of the biggest nightmares for me, is ineffective meetings. I think meetings are often an absolute waste of time. I don't know if you've ever sat in that meeting. You know, you sit around a table with 4 or 5 people, you have this great discussion about a whole bunch of stuff, and then you leave this meeting thinking, what did we achieve? Be very, very careful of doing that. I'll never forget one guy I worked with once, always insisted on having meetings on Monday mornings at 9 o'clock for 2 hours. I used to always, you know, on my way there on discussions with other business owners say, why would somebody spend so much time starting the week, you know, just talking about what? What do people talk about for 2 hours? So I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how to improve and have more effective meetings. And the last one, and I think it's a very, very important thing, is being disorganized. A little bit later on, I'm going to discuss with you one of my favorite clients, a client that I have in St. Martin in the Caribbean. And just this image I have of the perfect business. Hopefully I don't forget to tell you. But being disorganized, there's nothing worse than being disorganized. I don't know if you've ever worked for somebody that's disorganized. They always seem to be, you know, doing stuff, fighting fires and having problems and challenges and things like that. There's nothing more frustrating, I think, than working for somebody that is totally disorganized. Or your employee is not sitting back thinking, you know what, working for this guy or for this woman is impossible because she really can't manage herself. So be very, very careful of that. A very, very good exercise for every single one of us to do, especially those of us that are a little bit overwhelmed, you know, too much going on in our lives, is to actually sit down. To sit down and write down exactly what we're spending our time on. You know, just get a piece of paper and log 2 days, full hours. So what do you do when you get to work? And, you know, speak about, you know, write down your emails, and then you go and see a client, and you go for lunch, or whatever it is. Write down all the things that you do on a daily basis. The second thing you need to analyze is what exactly is taking up your time. And let me tell you what many, many small business owners, I've realized, spend a lot of time doing. They spend a lot of time doing stuff that doesn't generate revenue. Let me say that again. They spend a lot of time doing stuff that doesn't generate revenue. Be very, very careful of this. You know, sometimes we're busy doing stuff, but busy doing stuff doesn't grow your business. So be very, very careful of this. So it's a very, very good idea to actually write down and try and work out what are you doing on a daily basis. And very, very quickly you'll realize that you are not spending enough time on certain things and spending too much time on other things. And you want to try and determine what those things are. So one of the solutions I have seen a lot of small business owners use, actually let me go back a little bit. The most successful business owners that I have worked with over the last 15 or 16 years use to-do lists. They use them, and why do they use them? Because I believe they work for them. So I encourage every single one of you, if you're not using to-do lists today in your business, you should be using them. Another list to develop, actually a very, very good list, once you've analyzed what you do on a daily basis, is to work out what you shouldn't be doing. So maybe start off with a daily to-do list, but also have a list of writing down things that you shouldn't be doing. And a lot of us, for example, I know people that are very creative. Well, creative people shouldn't be doing bookkeeping. That just makes no sense because there's no creativity involved in that. So these are some of the things that we need to identify. What are the things that we should be doing, and what are the things that we shouldn't be doing? And then once you decide what needs to be done, and then you come up with a system. And for many very successful business owners that I've worked with over the years, the daily to-do list is the solution. So I always say to business owners, I don't care what system you use, whether it's a piece of paper, whether it's a document on your computer, but you must use a system. So two of my favorites at the moment are online systems. I like Google Tasks, and I like Wunderlist. Actually, Wunderlist is my favorite at the moment. And the reason I like Wunderlist is because you've got access to it wherever you go. So when I'm working on my computer at my desk, I've got access to my to-do list. When I'm on the train with my telephone, I've got access to my to-do list. When I'm at home on a different computer, I have access to that to-do list. So it's a very, very good idea to have that. Because if you're the typical business owner, you'll think of ideas when you're driving is not a good idea, but when you're on the train, you'll think of ideas when you're at home, sitting, watching TV or whatever it is. So you're thinking of these ideas. So a very good idea or way to use it is to develop your own to-do list and then maybe come up with a couple of to-do lists for different departments in your business. Or if you only have 2 or 3 employees, have to-do lists for your different employees. So for example, you may have one to-do list, your to-dos. You may have, say you got a website to-dos. You may have employee to-dos, whatever it is. It allows you to create as many to-do lists as you want. And David says that Wunderlist is excellent. I agree with you. And it's a free tool, but a very, very effective tool. Another good strategy I've read about is about setting specific tasks and then prioritizing them. So every single one of us have that. We sit down in the office in the morning, there are certain things that have to be done today, but certain things that would be nice to do today. So it's a very good idea, if this works for you, is to come up with priorities. What needs to be done, what would be nice to do. And then start off your day by doing the things that need to be done. And if you do this on a regular basis, you'll be okay. Another very important lesson that I've learned from other business owners is that never assume that your employees understand what managing their time is. Never assume that. Rather teach them. So come up with a standard system that they can use. So on the screen now, I've got a very, very good example. One of the most successful business owners I ever worked with was a young woman by the name of Cindy. And I remember visiting her office and her saying to me, Andrew, I have a big problem, is that my employees are working really hard and they're spending a lot of time doing marketing and this and that, but they're not spending enough time doing administration or whatever it is. And then what she did is she came up with a system of a daily management system they could use. So in this little list, and it's a very simple list and you can adapt it to your business, under marketing, she'd put a whole lot of marketing to-dos for the day. Under administration, they'd put a whole lot of administration to-dos today. But the important thing is giving employees a system that they can use. Otherwise, what you're going to have is you're going to have everybody using a different system, which you don't want to. You want to try and standardize things. And if you can standardize it, it's very, very easy to teach. So you want to try and standardize things. So maybe this is the solution. Maybe not the typical to-do list with just a list of stuff. Maybe this works better for you. Whatever works, just use it. Another strategy is to plan your week. So I think planning your week is a very, very good idea. Because let me just think about what we need to do. Every week, there are things we need to do. There are checks we need to write out or payments we need to make. A lot of us aren't writing checks anymore. There's marketing we need to do. there's sales we need to do, a whole bunch of stuff that need to be done. But we need to allocate time for these different things. So I would encourage you to develop a weekly plan. So you set aside time to do things that will help you grow your business. Things like marketing, things like spending time on social media, things like sending out emails. We got to plan for these things. But make sure that all of your employees develop weekly to-do lists. And again, it's educating them. Whatever system you use, could be a weekly system, could be a monthly system. I don't care what you use, but you need to standardize it and everybody use the same system so that we can teach everybody together how to do that. And then maybe another strategy for you is to sit down with your employees on a daily basis or a weekly basis, maybe every Monday or Tuesday morning for 10 minutes, not 1 hour or 2 hours, but for 10 minutes and say, you know what, I think I'm going to work on this week, that and that. It makes it so much easier for everybody when we discuss these things and we get a bit of direction. So planning your week could be your solution. And here's an example of a little tool you maybe want to use. So maybe on your little weekly planning list, you'll have headings like this. What went really well last week? Oh, well, I went and see this client, and I discussed this, and then on Thursday I sent out 7 emails, or whatever it is. So you'd speak about things like that. The second part, and this is a very, very important thing, I think as business owners, we want to try and solve problems before they become serious things. So if I'm having a problem with a client, or if I'm having a problem with, I don't know, some system that we're using, the sooner we can discuss it, the better. So what didn't go well last week? Where are you stuck? You know, sometimes we get stuck with really, really simple things. And if you've got employees that are getting stuck, or you've got contractors or whatever it is that are getting stuck with simple little problems, you need to solve them. And maybe come up with your own. The top 3 things I'll be working on this week. I'm going to go and get a new customer. I'm going to phone one of our existing customers, and I'm going to set up that email template. Whatever it is, even if you just focus on that, I think it's a good way of doing things. Really, the thing I'm trying to get you to do and to understand is that you've got to come up with a system, a process that you can use for yourself firstly, and then you can teach your employees to use. So here's another example. Maybe use this simple system. Sales I plan to make this week, marketing I plan to do this week, number of contacts, whatever it is, whatever's relevant to your business. And remember, if you send me an email, I will send you a copy of these simple little templates that you can use to manage your business. And it's really about using templates. And I'm going to tell you why a little bit later on, and why it's so important. Remember my story about the Caribbean, why it is so, so important for you and I to come up with the little systems that we can use. The other thing I want you to do, and I encourage all business owners to do, is to develop an annual planner. And I don't care what you use, whatever calendar you use. Some of us still probably use paper-based calendars, whatever it is. But it's a very, very good idea near the end of the year or into the new year to start planning your year. Things like your annual goals. What are your sales goals? What are your marketing goals? What are your personal goals? And actually write these down on a calendar. You might sit down, for example, and list conferences or events you're going to go to over the next 12 months. You might, for example, list your vacation time. I think vacation time is very, very important. When I meet business owners and they say to me, I haven't been on a vacation for 5 years, I'm thinking, why not? Vacations are so good for you. They're good for your business. You get away from your business. You come up with some great ideas on vacation. So I think allocating vacation time is an important thing. I've worked with thousands of business owners over the years. But I've never found a business owner that says, you know what, I went on vacation and it wasn't good for me, or I didn't benefit. Vacation's always good for you, and they're fun, and they're time to spend with your family. So I encourage you to do that. And other important events. But just start becoming a person that plans and thinks about things more. Plans things in advance. It's just so much easier for you and for your employees. So what do we do to save time? Busy business owner, lots going on. How do I save my time? The first thing is we got to learn to say no. Very, very important that sometimes you've got to say no. And be very, very careful of always being the nice guy. Somebody says, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Some of us just do that in our own businesses, but even with our customers. There are certain things that you shouldn't be doing. So you might say to a customer, I'd really like to help you, but. So make sure you learn to say no at the right time. The other thing is learn to establish deadlines. I found that business owners find this very, very effective. They set themselves deadlines. Even if there isn't a deadline, they'll set themselves a deadline so they always deliver stuff on time. A very, very good idea. The third thing, and one of the most important things that a lot of us find very, very challenging, is delegating. So I'm going to give you a strategy that you can use to delegate more effectively. And in the beginning, it's a little bit difficult, but eventually, you'll get to a stage where you'll become a good delegator. Things that worry me is when I meet business owners and they say things like, if I don't do it, it'll never get done properly. If you have that mentality, you can never grow your business because you have to be there all the time, which is a big problem. Avoid making promises you can't keep, which creates stress in your life, and sometimes you just got to do it. Sometimes you don't want to be working on a Saturday morning, but that's sometimes the best time. You're going to the office for a couple of hours, the telephone's off, you just get stuff done. And that feeling that you have after you've got stuff done is a great feeling. So sometimes we've just got to do it and allocate catch-up days to do that. And now's a good time. Maybe you started the year well, you planned things really well, but now you start just catching things up. A lot of us have got our income taxes to be doing over the next couple of weeks. Just get it done. Have you phoned your accountant to check that things on, that he or she's got all the information, all those type of things we need to work on so we get things updated. So earlier on I mentioned delegating. Let me go back to delegating. The first thing you need to determine what needs to be delegated. Delegate stuff to people that can handle it. And this is very, very important. As a business owner, if I'm working for you, you need to know what I'm capable of doing. That doesn't mean you don't challenge me every now and then, but you need to make sure that if you give me a task, I can deal with it. The third thing, and very, very importantly, is give somebody very, very clear instructions. So this is what I want you to do, and this is the expected outcome. People will do things much better when you give them simple, easy instructions and what your expected outcomes are. Encourage people to ask questions, set deadlines, and give your people feedback. When they've done a really good job, compliment them. If they've had a couple of challenges, which you need to encourage. I think it's a very, very important thing in small business to understand that sometimes your people are going to make mistakes. That is okay as long as they learn from those mistakes is the key thing. What about our workspaces? How do we manage this? One of the things that I did quite a lot over the last few years is worked in different parts of the world. I was lucky enough to work in places like Russia and Latvia and things like that. But the thing I realized very, very quickly, when I was out of the business still needed to run. So I came up with a very, very simple system where all my binders in my office are really well labeled. So let's say, for example, I was sitting in Riga, in Latvia, and somebody from my office phoned me and said to me, I need to find out where the revenue agency statements are. Where should I go? Or I need to find the bank statements. Where do I find the bank statements? So if you have a very simple system that anybody can find it, it allows you to get out of the office. But if every time somebody needs something in your business, they've got to speak to you, you have a problem, because then you can't leave the business, which is some of the problems we face as small business owners. So organize your workspace so people can find things very, very easily. Organize your desk drawers so people know where things are. Where's the stationery? Where's the stapler? Where's whatever it is that you need? And a very good idea is to have every 90-day cleanups. Let me give you an example. As business owners, we collect stuff. We collect, flyers. We collect email. We collect stuff that I call them just-in-case stuff. So we put them on a pile, and as soon as we have time, we're going to go through them. So what you need to do, I think, regularly is just get rid of some of that just-in-case stuff. And what you do is you get rid of stuff because it creates chaos in your life. And in a business, you need to get rid of things. So shredding paper that you don't need, getting rid of equipment you don't need in your business, all those things are very, very important. So 90-day cleanups are a good idea, and learn to label things so people understand where they are. So let's go back to one of the biggest challenges we face as small business owners. How do we manage our email and social media? So one of the strategies that business owners have told me about often is having dedicated time during the day when they're going to be responding to emails. And try this. It may not work for you, but try this. Maybe get to the office in the morning or wake up in the morning. Typically, most of us will nowadays get our email on the telephone. Maybe you spend a half an hour going through emails and responding, and then you check at 10 o'clock, and then you check at noon or whatever it is. But make sure you have specific times during the day when you're going to be responding to emails. But respond to every single email. Develop folders. A very good strategy is to develop folders with names so you can put emails into it. So for example, if it's a client email, maybe it'll go into that client emails folder. Delete and archive file emails is a very good idea. One of the habits I've developed over time that works really well with me is I only have maximum at any time 50 emails in my inbox, never ever more than 50. As soon as it goes after 50, I get a bit, I start hyperventilating and know that I need to empty out my email box. So come up with a standard for yourself. It doesn't have to be 50, could be 60, could be 100, whatever you're comfortable with. Allocate time once a week to empty out your email box. So maybe on a Friday afternoon, just before you go home, spend a half an hour just clearing out your email box. Make sure you have a good junk mail and spam filter, and allocate 1 hour a day for social media. Now listen to this. 1 hour a day is all you need to do. Again, find a time that's appropriate for you. You go onto Facebook, make a couple of comments, go onto Twitter, and there's tools like Hootsuite that you can use that you can pre-set the comments that you're going to be making. Maybe that's something that will work for you. So instead of going on a few times a day, you just spend a half an hour in the morning setting up all your tweets for the day. You go onto LinkedIn, see who wants to connect with you, and just get it out of the way. So again, the hour is maybe you need more than an hour or less than an hour. The point I'm trying to get across here is you've got to allocate time, and that's the key thing. I said to you earlier on is that I think meetings are an absolute waste of time. And let me tell you, I think if you manage meetings properly, I think meetings can be very, very effective. There are a couple of really simple guidelines. Make sure that you never, ever have a meeting without an agenda. So write down, it can be very simple. Just write down a bunch of things that is important. Everybody attending must be prepared, and that is a key thing. You don't want people attending that haven't planned for the meeting. They rush into the meeting saying, what, I've been busy and this and that, I haven't had time. People must be prepared, otherwise you delay the meeting. Start and end meetings on time, and make sure you assign tasks and ensure that the decision is taken. That's the key thing. So if no action is taken, you've wasted time. And so make sure you do that. Keep them short. Maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. One lesson I've learned over the years is that if you give people an hour, they'll fill an hour. You give them 2 hours, they'll fill 2 hours. So if somebody knows there's only 20 minutes or only 30 minutes, well, that's all they're going to take. The next section of my presentation is the most important part of any small business. Let me say that again. The next part of my presentation is the most important part of any business. So I love reading, and this is a very, very interesting book. What these guys did, they had a problem at a local hospital. A lot of people were dying. They were dying from, I don't know, some certain people were getting, because the doctors were not washing their hands properly or whatever it is. There was something going on in this hospital. So what these people decided to do, they went into the hospital and they got a bunch of nurses around and they said, from now on, we want you to use this checklist And every single time a doctor comes in and she's going to perform a surgery, you make sure that you go through the checklist. So the doctor's got to wash her hands, and then she's got to put on the cap and whatever it is. And the interesting thing is they found in this hospital that once they developed checklists, what they found is that they saved more lives. Let me say that again. When they developed checklists, they saved more lives. So I encourage you to do this in your business. Just think of it. Let's say you're in a business that, I don't know, you're in a transport business. You're in a transport business, and because you've been in the transport business for a few years, you know that there are certain ways of loading a truck that is more effective than others. Come up with a checklist for your employees. Say to them, when you get to the truck, first check that there's gas in the tank. Then you check if there's water in the whatever. Then you go to the back of the truck and you open the back, whatever. Come up with a checklist for people. Because once you come up with a checklist, it makes it so much easier for people to ensure that they stick to what's on the checklist. I'll give you a very good example, and every one of us experienced this. We go to the local mall, we walk into the washroom, and on the back door, there's a little checklist. The cleaner needs to come in, he or she needs to do what they need to do, then they need to sign on the checklist. Why do they have that checklist on the back door? You know why? Because it works. And what it does is the cleaner manages him or herself, because if they don't sign on it, they know that that place wasn't cleaned. And that is the same principle I want you to use in your business, is that if you have really simple systems, if you have really simple checklists, you can build a big business. Now, let me go back to that example earlier on that I was speaking about, the Caribbean. So I have a client that I worked with. I trained them maybe 12, 13 years ago. And what they did is they built a business. It was a very interesting model. What they did, the husband was involved in the timeshare industry, or the wife was involved in the timeshare industry, and the husband loved sailing. So there was this combination. So what they decided to do was to come up with a business where they sold timeshare on catamarans. And if any of you have traveled to any of the beach cities in the world, you'll go to these harbors and you'll see hundreds and hundreds of boats that are hardly ever used. Anyway, so they built this very, very successful business. And I always say to business owners, my dream is to be sitting on one of their catamarans. They're usually 65-foot catamarans or 70-foot catamarans with Edith and Magnus, and that's their names, sipping a glass of red wine and phoning the office and saying, so how much money did you guys deposit today? And once they tell me, I put down the phone. The only way I can build a business like that is when I come up with very, very simple systems that allows my employees to manage my business without me there. And the only way I'm going to do it is when I come up with systems and processes. And one of my favorite books of all time, when small business owners ask me, what should I read? I always recommend this book that is currently on the screen. Michael Gerber wrote the best-selling business book of all time. And some of the things that he says in the book are very, very important. Actually, when I speak to small business owners, I encourage them to read this book twice. Because the first time, you don't always grasp the concept, because he speaks about franchising and McDonald's and being a technician and stuff. But the basic principle in the book is that systems help you run the business. And what is a system? A system ensures that things are done consistently, regardless of who's doing it. And then you get good people to run the systems. Let me say that again. You develop very, very good systems, and then you get good people to run these systems. That is the way you build a successful business. And all you've got to do is lead these people. And you've got to understand this concept. And the best way of me explaining it is IKEA. Just think of your local IKEA store. Whether you like them or not, irrelevant. Just think of it. You go to an IKEA store to buy furniture. you have to go and pick up the furniture yourself. Then you have to get home and you have to build the furniture yourself. Because if you don't build the furniture, you don't have IKEA furniture. The other lesson some of us have learned, especially the men, is that if you don't stick to what they've got on the piece of paper, often the furniture doesn't work out properly. So what I'd encourage every single one of you, think of your business as IKEA furniture. So let's say, for example, you're in the writing business. Let me go back to some of the businesses that we had early on. Okay, we had your energy monitoring. So somebody's in the energy monitoring business. Imagine if you developed a checklist for me. I know nothing about energy monitoring. If you developed a checklist for me, that if I read the instructions exactly how you wrote them down, I could become an energy monitor just like you. Think of the power of that. All of a sudden, you can replicate yourself. Doesn't matter what it is. So the lesson you've got to learn as a business owner from IKEA or any franchise out there is that you've got to come up with a way of doing things. So this is what I encourage you to do. What I encourage you to do is to come up with a manual, a procedure manual, and you write on the front page of this manual, this is the way we do things here, manual. And when you employ new salespeople, new marketing people, new whatever people, you make sure that they read the manual first. In that manual, you'll speak about your vision, you'll speak about your mission, but most importantly, you will give them very, very simple instructions to do things. If you're a graphic or web designer, there are ways of designing websites that make sense. For example, you might have on the list, before you design a website, ask the customer these 10 questions. Who's their target market? What do they want to achieve? Whatever it is. Just try it with any function in your business. And I promise you, you will soon realize that once you come up with a very, very good system, you don't have to be in the business. You can come with me to visit Magnus and Edith in St. Martin, and we can drink some red wine together. Why? Because the systems that we have built allow our business to operate without us. So we need systems for finance. We need systems for marketing. We need systems for sales, for all the departments in our business. But I want you to keep it simple. So let's look at marketing. What systems would you come up with? The first thing you've got to come up with are standards. So for example, and I don't know if any of you are like this, but I was a retailer for 11 years. If you don't give your employees standards, what do? They create their own. So if you don't say to them, you know what, you're not allowed to use black or you're not allowed to use red or whatever you're not allowed to use, you know what, they're going to do what they want. So just get out a pen and paper or use or a Word document and start writing that. We only allow black pants, this. When we go and see client, we dress up fancy, whatever it is. Write these things down. When you want to send a letter to a client, you make sure you use this letterhead. This is the way we use this is the way our business cards are going to be. This is the colors we use. This is where you put our logo. All these things are very, very important. And I'm trying to use as simplistic examples as possible. But just think of any franchise that you walk to on a daily basis. When you go and buy your coffee at Starbucks, they have standard cups. They have standard this. You go and buy your sandwich at, I don't know, Subway. They have standard ways of doing things. Why do they do that? Because it works. And if you and I can understand this concept, not that we want to build franchise businesses, but if we empower our people by giving them a simple process or a simple system, it allows us to do sales or whatever it is we need to do. Don't assume people know anything. Develop a simple marketing plan template that you use all the time. Give people customer service guidelines. For example, when you say to an employee that we offer great customer service in our business, what does that mean? You know, maybe write down, make sure that you phone a customer within 24 hours, whatever. Come up with what's important for you. In our business, we even do it with writing, for example. We write a lot of content for a lot of clients, so we come up with some guidelines. And in the beginning, I remember some of my employees, when they started, and I'd say to them, you got to start doing this, they never really saw the value. They thought it was a waste of time. Why am I writing these things down? But they learned very, very quickly is that when you write a process or a system or a checklist, you know what? You can get anybody to do it. So when it comes to marketing, standardize things. When it comes to sales, develop a sales system. I often discuss with business owners. I say to them, you know what, do you have a list of questions you ask people when you go and see them? And if you do, it makes it so much easier. You know, who do you do business with? Who have you bought from before? All that type of stuff. What's your budget? Come up with a standard. Develop standard templates for quotes, for proposals. Once you've got a standard, it's easy. You know, you can tweak it, you can adapt it, but it's easy to replicate it. And that is what you want to do, and you want to replicate it the same every single time. Develop lists of sales questions, develop an order entry process, whatever it is. Start off with a simple binder. On the front page, just write, this is the way we do things here. Start off with simple things. This is the way the fax machine works. This is the way the printer works. Whatever it is, and eventually you'll have it for every single function in your business. When it comes to your administration, your filing procedure, you know, do you have a system? And some of you might say, well, you know what, I'm the only person in my business. Well, that's okay. Hopefully, in a year's time or 2 years' time, you're not going to be the only person. Then you need a system. So have a client details form. Have a checklist for how the computer network works. You know, have standard shipping rules, whatever it is. And it just needs to be simple, 5 or 10 points, easy to read, easy to understand, not too fancy. If you make it too complicated, people are not going to stick to it. And this is why you need to simplify it. When it comes to your people management, you know, if you're a little bit of a larger business, you know, what does your organizational chart look like? Who's responsible for what? You know, do your employees know what's expected of them? What is their job description? Just come up with a simple template. Once you've done it once, it's easy to improve it and just replicate. Procedures on how to recruit people. Standard employee interview questions. So, you know, maybe you'll come up with the top 10 questions that you ask every person that you interview. Again, you're standardizing the thing. Everybody gets asked the same thing. Standardized performance reviews. You know, maybe that's something you come up with. Every 90 days, you sit down with your employees and we go over the top 10 things. What have you achieved over the last 90 days? What are your goals for the next 90 days? Whatever it is, you give them a template, they can write it down. Standard contracts. But the point I want you to get across to you is that once you do this, it makes your life easier. You don't have to explain things. You just say, go to the binder. On page 10, there's a little system you can use. Standard bookkeeping, guidelines for accounts receivable, petty cash policies, all these little things that we do in our business. Run your business like a franchise. If there's nothing else you learn from me today, I want you to use 2 examples. The IKEA example, just think of, even if you hate their furniture, but just think of their model. Most furniture stores build the furniture and deliver it. IKEA, they give you very simple instructions. You can do it yourself. When you go and buy that coffee at Starbucks or any other coffee shop, they standardize things. They don't keep changing things. They keep it simple. And because they keep it simple, they can replicate it. So run your business like a franchise. Once you have good systems and processes in place, your business becomes scalable and easier to manage and grow. And that is ultimately what you want to do. You want to build a business that has simple systems, that has a great brand, that has a vision, and that can be that you can replicate. Because you don't want to have a business that only depends on you. Doesn't matter how small it is, whether you are a 1-person business or a 5-person business. Imagine you want to sell your 1-person business one day. Somebody comes to you and says, I'll give you $10,000 for your business. You know what? You give them a binder and you say, well, this is the way I do things here. Then you've got a sellable business. Understand these concepts. And for some of you, I guarantee you it's going to make you a much more successful business owner. You're going to develop simple daily to-do lists. You're going to develop simple weekly to-do lists. You're going to educate your employees how to do things. You're going to make them follow checklists, and you're going to become a much better business owner. You're going to build a very successful business, and you're going to create jobs in your community. And ultimately, that's what we want to do.